Alright, what's going on guys? It's Apoqsi. Welcome back to yet another Cyberpunk 2077 info dump. Today we'll be discussing a lot of Cyberpunk 2077 info that comes from an interview with CD Projekt Red's John Mamias. The source will be linked as always down in the description below. It includes information on everything from fancy global illumination lighting tech being used in the game, details on the layered quest structure such as the quantity of street stories in Night City, the address of concerns about first person only, the likelihood of a Nintendo Switch port, the feature of sexualized violence in Cyberpunk 2077, and much more. Trust me, you're not gonna want to miss this one. Also, try to remember to put timestamps so that you can skip through this video, depending on the subject that you want to watch. So let's start with the thing I see brought up most often when it comes to Cyberpunk 2077, and typically in a negative light. That being concerned about the game featuring first person only. It's mostly from people that get motion sickness from first person perspectives, which is a completely valid concern, so I totally understand the criticism there. But here's the response to those concerns. There's stuff planned so that you'll be able to change your depth of field, reduce the head bobbing effect, and some other stuff that we want to do to make sure that people don't get sick, which is great to hear. A lot of developers don't add features to account for motion sickness in first-person games. I don't know if it's a lack of awareness that this is a thing, or if it's just such a small minority of gamers that developers or publishers don't see the point of implementing the features to combat it. So that is why it is such a problem for those that suffer from this, especially with their love for The Witcher, which was third person, so I totally understand why they would have the concern of not being able to play this game, especially with the hype revolving around it. Thankfully though, it does sound like they are well aware of the concerns and already have features and more in the works to combat this issue. As for when asked about the third person in vehicles, here's the response. Yeah, in vehicles you can, but just in the vehicles. Again, making it very clear that third person is only available in vehicles. And I think the reason for allowing third person in vehicles is due to the pure awareness of driving in video games. You don't have the peripheral vision of the ease of turning your head quickly while driving like in real life. Driving in first person can be very difficult, so I understand why they felt the need to add this. I also wouldn't be surprised if there was maybe vehicle related mechanics surrounding the decision of adding a third person to driving, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. I would say another big question when it comes to this game is the length and quantity of content. We know the game is going for quality, but what about the length? Well, here's John Mamias' response when questioned on game length. We're not sure yet. We're still finishing the game now, and there are different ways to play through it. There's different character builds, and it's very non-linear. Because you can play through it in so many different ways, it's a little bit risky to state the length of time. How do you figure that out? Especially when there's an open world and all the other content. And he's not kidding about there being plenty of other content other than just the main quest line, which is to be expected in an open world game. But here's what we learned about the side content in Cyberpunk 2077. In Witcher 3, we did the open world elements very late in the development process when we only had 2 or 3 people working on it or something. Now there's like 15 people doing these open world quests. There's a couple of layers. There's a passive layer, which is the vendors. Then there's the STSs, which are the street stories. I think there's around 75 street stories. Then there's minor activities as well. The street stories are like little quests. There's story, but there's not like advanced cinematic storytelling sequences so much. They're a way to explore the world and level up your character. They're all custom done. There's nothing like that that's automatically generated. There are set templates that the guys can use, but each one is customized to make them feel unique. The world's going to be filled with that stuff. It should feel really good. So all that sounds great. I'm not sure if the street stories are the side quests in this game or if there's going to be additional side quests tacked on to the street stories, and if street stories are a completely separate thing. I feel like they probably are, seeing as you referred to them as the open world quests, but we're gonna have to wait and see how everything plays out there. I feel like it is the side quests, and I feel like they're going to be a lot more quality than what we saw with The Witcher 3. Even though that game was really good, I'm sure they're going all in on quality this time around. Now, as for the different ways to play through the game, a good example is the ability to play through the game non-lethal style. I believe we've heard about this before, but here's what he had to say this time around. We're balancing it specifically so that you can get through it without killing anyone. There's a non-lethal route. It takes a lot longer to play too. The easiest way to play the game is to just gun right through it, which is nothing but great news. I appreciate them offering a non-lethal route for the game, as there are some people out there that don't like killing in games. It also just makes for a great challenge and lets you know that there is a good level of replayability with this game. I don't think anyone can really complain about being given an extra option for how they can go about playing the game. So again, this is nothing but good news. And to just give you a better idea that they are going all out on quality with this game, their attention to detail, I think, is already obvious, but here are the comments on the lighting and sound of this game that get me so much more excited for the day I can finally immerse myself into this game. There's some stuff that hasn't been talked about, such as the way that it's been lit. Our director keeps talking about the real-time global illumination system, which we haven't really seen in its full beauty yet. No one in the public has seen how it's finally going to look. It's going to look more breathtaking than we've seen so far. Also, the sound, the acoustic system that one of our sound programmers came up with is going to sound really realistic because of the way they're using the geometry. It creates this reverb effect, so that changes as the space changes. If I were a rich gamer, I'd definitely go out and buy a Dolby Atmos system to listen to this game. It's going to be very immersive, deep, and beautiful sounding. And the fact that they care so much about the lighting of the world and the sound design is really a good sign for Cyberpunk 2077. Lighting is often rushed in games, and sound is often one of the most overlooked pieces of the game, but it's honestly one of the most important. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how the lighting actually looks in game and being able to hear this game for myself. Now, what about the future of Cyberpunk 2077? Well, we got a lot of information on that actually, such as, will Cyberpunk 2077 ever come to the Nintendo Switch? Here's the response. Not as far as I know, not yet. I don't know if Cyberpunk 2077 would work on the Nintendo Switch. It might be too heavy for it. But then we did put The Witcher 3 on it, and we thought that would be too heavy too, but somehow we pulled it off. So I truly appreciate him addressing this question, even though it might not be the answer a lot of people are looking for. Switch owners are always anticipating big titles coming to their platform, so it's better to know sooner rather than later if a game isn't planned on coming to the platform. It's also nice to know that they're still keeping an open mind for the platform if they do find it to be possible down the line. Just like we discussed they were doing with VR in my previous Cyberpunk 2077 info dump video. The Witcher 3 did, however, require a massive downgrade to happen, and this game is so much more demanding than The Witcher 3, so the likelihood is very low in my opinion, and it might not even be the same game at that point. So I don't know, I will have to wait and see, but I would say don't get your hopes up. Now, what about DLC? Is that happening? Here's what we know. There'll be stuff that comes out after. The Witcher model kind of worked for us. I'm not allowed to say what it will be, but it'll probably be something like The Witcher. I wish I could talk about it more because for us, it's very interesting, but we can't, which is really exciting and relieving to hear, as DLC is something I love for games like this, for little refreshments after going through the game a couple of times. It's just nice to get story content added to large games like this, and the size of CD Projekt Red's Witcher 3 DLC was very large, so it would almost be like mini game releases each and every time they release DLC. That is if they go with the same Witcher 3 formula and style of DLC. A lot of linear games are shorter than the Witcher 3's DLCs, just to give you an idea, so the future of this game is looking bright, and it's not even released yet. One worrisome thing though is the likelihood of the game being banned and censored in some countries, such as Australia. John Mamias did address these concerns at length, so here's what he had to say. We have a big list of things that could be bad for us in Australia. The two big things are sexualized violence and drugs with rewards, but you can't really do Cyberpunk without drugs, right? We're not going to water it down, but I don't think there are any situations where you can take any real street name drug and get a reward from it. And there definitely aren't going to be any tasteless sexualized violence either. In the real world, there's lots of sexualized violence, right? It happens. So it might exist in this world, but the player will never be involved with something like that. We're trying to make it more mature, right? It's an art form, or we want it to be an art form, and we want to talk about difficult subjects like that, but yeah, we won't. We're not going to make a game where the player can do those kinds of things. It would be awful and tasteless. So I feel like what he's saying here is that this stuff will be in the game, but the actual player will not be the one committing these acts. And he did follow up the concerns about the game being banned with this final statement. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to be okay here. And I do truly hope this game isn't banned or censored anywhere. This game is looking to be a true masterpiece, so it would be really sad to see people blocked from playing it or forced to play a censored version of it. CD Projekt Red seems confident that they will avoid bans, but we'll have to wait and see how countries like Australia react to the more mature themes in the game. CD Projekt Red is touching on subjects that aren't very mainstream yet, so we'll just have to wait and see. I'd love to know your thoughts on everything we discussed here in this video. But that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please smack that like button down below, subscribe to Join the Good Fight if you haven't already, and ring that bell icon to stay updated in all of my future videos. It'd be super greatly appreciated as always. And until next time, this is Apoqsi signing off.